I didn't know the Ring doorbell saves everything, including the stuff you swear you'll never watch again. Weeks after the storm, I was sitting in my minivan outside the batting cages while Noah practiced, scrolling through Little League sign-up forms and Target coupons, when my thumb slipped and opened the clip labeled 11:47 p.m. You could call that the end of the story, or the beginning, or the moment when my spine remembered what truth feels like. On the pixelated porch, Grant's palm hovered near my wife's elbow, and then, frame by frame, Maddie shifted just enough to let air slide in between. It wasn't redemption, not a clean slate. It was a breath-sized boundary that I missed the first night because my skull was a tea kettle. Everyone tells you betrayal is a thunderclap, but it's also a drip. One receipt, one rumor, one Walgreens run at 10:18 p.m. for travel-sized shampoo. That night, I locked the screen and told myself I had chosen the higher road. No viral Facebook post, no scorched earth revenge. Only then did the algorithm chirp, like a digital conscience, and offer to auto-create a highlight reel. Even our appliances are thirsty for drama now. You already know the headline because it sounds like a clickbait fever dream. My boss showed up at my house, with my wife beside him. You imagine me foaming at the mouth, shouting in all caps, tossing a lawn chair through the bay window while the HOA fines me per shattered pane. But suburban Ohio is quieter than TikTok, and people like me specialize in swallowing. I reheated cold pad thai, ESPN mumbling about a West Coast game, and the cicadas were pitching their complaints to the trees. Then the chime, then the motion alert. Then Grant's church-clean Oxford shirt under porch light yellow as mustard, and Maddie's cardigan wrapped like she was the one who'd caught a chill. He took the corporate tone they teach you in operations director school. "Ethan, I didn't want you to hear this at work." He meant he didn't want me to hear this where there were witnesses. She meant, "Please let us inside, because our neighbors collect rumors like they collect Amazon boxes daily and without shame." If I'm telling it straight, that first hour unfolded like a procedural. He talked about an incident, about optics, about an escalating narrative on social. She said, "Grant, don't," which sounded like guilt to a man who'd been starving for clarity and would eat any scrap of certainty, even poison. I smelled hotel shampoo, the generic coastal breeze kind that tries too hard. I noticed a conference badge poking from Grant's blazer pocket. Cleveland Ops Summit. My team had built the routing model that made his slide deck shine. That's the part that stung more than I expected. Not just the cheating, not just the infidelity, but the casual way power decides your home is also its office. Somewhere between "we should control this before it spirals" and "let's keep perspective," the word family became elastic. Toxic love is elastic too. It stretches to fit the lie you need tonight, then snaps back in the morning and leaves a welt. If I'm telling it crooked, because conspiracy sometimes fits reality better than reality does, there's another version. In that one, the HOA is a shadow government, the PTO a surveillance arm, the Facebook Moms Group a counterintelligence unit run by a woman named Kara who posts casserole recipes at noon and burner rumors at midnight. In that version, our doorbell is an unreliable narrator and occasionally a prophet. It knew every pizza delivery boy by gait and could assign an 82% probability to the way Maddie tucked her hair behind her ear when someone important was watching. It stitched timelines better than any detective, and if you asked kindly, it would whisper that this wasn't about lust as much as silence. After the miscarriage, I turned sturdy like a mailbox, immovable and not very good at holding anything alive. That's the sort of detail the Ring saw. It cataloged quiet like evidence. But this isn't the part where I throw plates. I handed them water, which in America is the lowest rung of hospitality and the highest rung of civility during war. Grant delivered his misdirection like a man who once interned at a public relations firm. There was a rumor, Maddie behaving inappropriately with a parent at school, and he, the stalwart, wanted to get ahead of it. He wore his benevolence like cologne. She said, "That's not the rumor, Grant. It's worse. It's about us." And the word "us" became an axe, and the couch became a cliff, and I was a little league dad in a cartoon running past the edge before looking down. Would I like to rewind this story into a tidy lesson about forgiveness and family? Ask the ring. It remembers everything, especially what I wish I didn't. The next morning pretended to be normal. Bento lunchbox, tiny silicone cups for blueberries, a note with a joke about a dinosaur who hates math. The Kroger receipt crinkled in my pocket like a threat. The sun came up the way it always does on cul-de-sacs, named after trees that were chainsawed to make room for cul-de-sacs. Our neighbor waved with the quick wrist of a man who knows the gossip but wants to look like he doesn't. I drove to the warehouse, and warehouse air, the blend of dust and optimism, filled my lungs. That's when I remembered that America, in addition to being a country, is a performance review. I can't tell if this paragraph is satire or just Tuesday. Grant called it a quick sink, which is what men like him call anything that will last long enough to rearrange your bones. The conference room smelled like coffee breath and paper cuts. There was an HR person in a soft cardigan who said she was on our side, which is how you learn there are sides you didn't choose. "We want you to take a mental health day," she offered, as if one day could pry a crowbar into a decade. Grant kept glancing at the glass wall where the floor team could see us. Power performs for an audience. It steals your living room at night and your dignity in daylight. I nodded, because that's what my species does in captivity, and then my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be Tara Ellison, a woman who never met a fundraiser she couldn't charm. Her text said, "You deserve the truth. Tonight." She attached receipts that shimmered like fish scales, Apple Pay charges in the lobby bar, a hotel folio with 2 entrees, and a kid's mac and cheese at 10:12 p.m. I stared at the mac and cheese line like it might confess something holy or obscene. Mix family into betrayal, and it curdles. At this point, the scene wants to be a tragedy, but it keeps tripping over comedy. On Facebook, the moms group had already achieved DEFCON 2. Someone posted a blurry photo captioned, "Saw a thing at the gala, eyes open, Queens," with a side thread debating whether mascara counts as emotional labor. Kara, the casserole spy, dropped a paragraph about protecting our kids from small-town scandals that ends with a passive-aggressive recipe for linguine. I scrolled, nauseous and weirdly hungry. Meanwhile, my boss, the one arriving at Porches like a plot twist, suggested I sign an NDA for everyone's protection, which is what you say when you mean your own. I didn't sign. I did the Midwest thing. I took it home, stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like Ohio, and stared at it during dinner like it might ring. When Maddie finally talked, it came out half confession, half weather report. She said it happened once, months ago, in a hotel 2 exits past Reason. She said grief makes you bargain with nonsense, and that Grant is world-class nonsense, and that I went quiet after we lost the baby, and she didn't know how to put a fire under a man who was trying to be a rock. I could hear the apology, and I could hear the script, and I don't know if the difference matters when a marriage is bleeding through a towel. I asked if it was about love. She shook her head and said, "About being seen," which is another kind of toxic love, the kind where you trade your reflection for applause. We didn't so much fight as narrate. Americans narrate. We have podcasts about our feelings and TV shows about our podcasts. Somewhere in there, I made a joke about the NDA being the world's saddest fridge art, and she laughed, and then we hated that we could still laugh. Tara showed up like a private eye with PTA flair, a manila envelope, a ponytail that meant business, a calm I wanted to rent. She said this wasn't about revenge so much as recalibration. Her prenup had teeth, but they dulled if Grant was terminated for cause. She suggested cause might live in the envelope. A Polaroid from the holiday party where Grant leaned into Maddie like a man negotiating with gravity. Expense reports where client outreach looked a lot like a weekend detour. Calendar invites that overlapped like a Venn diagram of bad decisions. She said she had a thumb drive too, but she'd only hand it over if I promised not to ruin Maddie in the splash zone. The thing about conspiracy is it's often just structure without a conscience. The HOA, the PTO, the corporation, the school district, They all prefer pretty lies to messy truths because pretty lies don't demand policy. I'd love to tell you I walked out and became a hero. What I did was buy a Compliance 101 book on Amazon and a rotisserie chicken at Costco because you can't blow up your life on an empty stomach. At Little League, a dad in wraparound sunglasses asked if I'd seen The Thread. I asked him if he'd seen his own reflection and then pretended I'd meant something nicer. Watching Noah swing, I wondered how many secrets fit under a baseball cap. On the bleachers, a mom whispered, "Betrayal is contagious," as if infidelity were spread by eye contact like pink eye. Then she asked if I could bring orange slices Saturday. I said yes. You can grocery shop your way through damn near anything. That night, the doorbell chimed again. I watched the porch empty, then full, then Tara in the center, framed like a witness in a documentary. She said, "Quietly or loudly, your choice," which sounded like a dare and a blessing. I wanted thunder. I wanted to torch reputations and live stream it under a filter called Judgment Day. But I also wanted my son to keep his sponsor and my wife not to drown in a rumor someone else invented. So I held both desires like hot irons and asked for time. In the movies, this is the part where a man chooses vengeance and grows a 5 o'clock shadow that sparkles under neon. In real life, this is the part where you book a therapy appointment at a place with a fake waterfall and plastic ferns and a receptionist named Joy who never raises her voice. Imagine a courtroom, but make it Zoom. Monday, 8 a.m., Corporate Integrity Review, where the judge is a senior VP who collects vintage baseball cards and the jury is 3 people with muted microphones. I sat in my minivan in the school parking lot because that's modern America. You attend your own life's hearing between drop-off and emails. I had a deck. Of course I had a deck. Slides with toll pass logs, hotel folios, overlapping travel, DMs from a burner account that wasn't very good at hiding its IP, calendar invites coded like cheap spies. If revenge is a dish best served cold, corporate PowerPoint is a walk-in freezer. I didn't say cheating first. I said retaliation. I didn't say family first. I said abuse of power. I didn't say toxic love. I said a work environment where refusal felt career-limiting. Integrity perked up at career-limiting, like I'd said the password. This is where the tone tilts. Because somewhere between slide 9 and slide 10, the Rings app pinged me with a memory. It auto-generated a montage of our front door through the seasons set to ukulele. There we were on Halloween as astronauts, on Thanksgiving with pie, on the night after the miscarriage when Maddie stood outside watching the rain like it might stitch something back together. I clicked it away because who can watch grief while presenting Exhibit B? Still, it lingered. A phantom tab. Conspiracy theory. Our devices know when we're about to choose cruelty and throw up a montage to soften us. Fantasy. The doorbell whispers, "Don't hurt each other," into the power lines, and the neighborhood hums nicer for 3 minutes. Grant dialed in with that "who, me" tone I used as a teenager when my mom found the dent in the bumper. He framed everything as mentorship gone awry, a lapse in judgment never to be repeated, certainly not weaponized. HR glowed beige. Tara joined with a name on her square that said T.E., guest. She waited until he mentioned an NDA. He still swears he didn't present it as hush money. And then she unleashed Exhibit Z, a Slack screenshot where Grant told his executive assistant to bury the counselor with the parent angle. The parent angle. That was the rumor that made my wife into tabloid confetti. Integrity stopped pretending to sip coffee. My heart did the petty dance revenge loves, and then the Ring offered me a new filter called Gentle, which made faces look softer. America is a carnival of wrong timing. We could end here with a pink slip and a hashtag. He was suspended pending termination for cause. The district issued a careful statement separating Maddie from the parent rumor. The mom's group pivoted to a bake sale. I turned down a promotion with extra zeros because it smelled like hush. I took a lateral into compliance, where my job is to recognize the shape of other people's mistakes before they calcify. If that sounds like a parody of growth, you're not wrong. My therapist says satire is how we bleed slowly. But before that tidy paragraph, Maddie and I tried to speak without performing. It was like learning to use our hands again after years of holding a phone. She said grief made her become a pair of eyes begging to be met. I said my idea of being strong was to go silent and lift heavy things that didn't need lifting. She said she didn't want a divorce. She wanted a story we didn't have to tell anyone else. I said I didn't want revenge. I wanted a life where the word family didn't feel like a PR campaign. We landed on a trial separation, which sounds like you're beta testing sorrow. Noah asked if this meant 2 bedrooms or 2 Christmases, and we told him it meant 2 houses, both with his name in Sharpie on the fridge. Sometimes a kid saves you by asking the practical questions. The conspiracy part? Fine. The HOA actually did play a role. Turns out the president, a man who looks like a sock puppet of a senator, had been fielding anonymous concerns about excessive porch activity on our block. He pulled me aside at the pool and suggested discretion, as if he were a consigliere offering to dry clean my conscience. I told him my porch would host whatever reality chose to bring, and if he wanted quiet, he could drown it with the fountain in the retention pond. He blinked like a lizard and said the fireworks show would proceed as planned. Parody is just truth wearing a clown nose. Weeks later, there was another knock at 11:47 p.m. because life loves an echo. This time it was Tara and Noah returning a glove. She looked lighter, like someone who had set down a piano. We stood there with the awkwardness of adults whose lives brushed edges and then tore. She said she was filing for divorce and that somehow, weirdly, her capacity for kindness had gotten bigger, not smaller. I said I was learning to speak before the silence turned to stone. Noah held the glove like treasure. The ring blinked. Somewhere, the cloud added a pixel to our archive. I could say I forgave Maddie and she forgave me, but that makes forgiveness sound like a switch. It's more like a stubborn faucet. Some days it runs, others you have to smack the pipe. We kept co-parenting like we were training for the Olympics. Shared calendars, Starbucks handoffs, Target runs where we pretended the school supply aisle was Switzerland. There were days I wanted to text Grant a photo of my car's odometer rolling over 100,000 miles with a caption that said, "I outlasted your career, champ." There were days I wanted to send Maddie the ring montage with gentle filter and say, "I see you like this, not like a headline." There were also days I turned off notifications and let the quiet be a room we could redecorate later. One night, because I am American and we trial and error redemption, I found myself at an AA meeting I wasn't technically qualified to attend, which seemed like a metaphor. I sat in the back while a man said he never realized how much of his life was an apology until he tried to tell the truth without adding a joke. I thought about all the satire I'd used as a shield. Jokes about NDAs, riffs about the HOA, conspiracy theories to keep me from looking at the most ordinary heartache on earth, 2 people hurting in different keys and mistaking echo for song. I walked out into the parking lot and called my dad, a man whose love language is oil changes, and told him I was proud of how he kept showing up for Mom even when she didn't ask for help. He said, "Well, bud, your mom once ran the dishwasher with no soap for 3 months because the store moved the aisle. Marriage is mostly finding the soap." I laughed so hard I spilled the coffee I didn't need. Here's the wildest fantasy I will admit out loud. Some nights, when I stand on the porch, I imagine the ring is less a camera and more a translator. It sees grief and renders it as rain. It sees cheating and renders it as 2 people terrifically bad at asking for what they needed. It sees revenge and turns it into a porch light left on, just in case. It sees betrayal and doesn't deny it. It just refuses to crown it. And every once in a while, it catches something soft, like Maddie stepping back from Grant's touch that first night, and tells me in its little chime, there was a line, and she found it, even if she found it late. When people ask, because people ask, I tell them the truth with no seasoning. My boss showed up at my house with my wife beside him, and it broke things. And we are building other things now. If they want details, I give them the ones that don't bleed on Noah. There was infidelity, and there was a rumor. And the rumor turned out worse than the truth because lies always sprawl. If they ask about revenge, I say accountability is what revenge looks like when it grows up. If they say toxic love, I say yes, and also grief, and also silence, and also the ways work sneaks its boots onto your family rug. If they say betrayal, I nod. If they say family, I nod again. If they say cheating, I don't flinch anymore. Words are just boxes until you fill them with specific afternoons.